A 6'1" guard from Florida, number 55, Jason Williams.
Jason Williams! Oh, boy! Williams has eyes in the back of his head. Oh, my goodness, that was vintage Pistol Pete Maravich in the form of Jason Williams.
Simply a genius with a basketball. That's an assist.
Jason Williams was born November 18, 1975 in Bell, West Virginia. He lived with his father on the campus of the local high school where his father worked at. With keys to the gym, he basically worked day and night. I mean, the kid was obsessed, and although his slim frame and unintimidating stature was less than ideal, he trained his way to the top. He states he put weights on his wrists and wore leather gloves to make his hands quicker and more controlled. He'd practice passing accurately with both hands off of all type of actions, definitely not what many guys were doing at that age. The work paid off as you'd expect, with Jason running the show in high school alongside his partner in crime, Randy Moss. Yeah, that Randy Moss. The two had a great run, with one of the most interesting 1-2 combos that I've ever heard of. Williams racked up accolades, becoming the first player at his high school with 1,000 points and 500 assists, and he also earned a West Virginia Player of the Year award his senior year, before they parted ways to college, going on their own path. Williams' college selection was a little tricky, committing and uncommitting to Providence College, but the first game he suited up for was with Marshall University. He put up some very impressive numbers his freshman year, before following his head coach to Florida State the following year. At this point was where Williams completely broke out to a top guard in the country. He set a school record with 17 assists in a game in December, and finished with near 17 and 7 averages. But this is where the snowball would come to a halt. Williams started to flare up off the court, showing some major red flags. He was suspended in February for the entire tournament after his third canvas violation. I mean, I know he's just smoking weed, but when you rack up 3 violations taking yourself off the floor, it just shows a lack of accountability to your team and your career. And NBA teams and scouts shared this opinion. He was no doubt a question mark with comparisons to Pete Maravich. He was speculated as a future NBA legend at the point guard position, but off-the-court issues made you wonder if he was just caught up in all the shiny lights. He fell to 7th overall to a pretty subpar Sacramento Kings team, but this actually proved to be the perfect scenario in this case. The Kings just traded their star Mitch Richmond to the Wizards for all-star power forward and Chris Webber. Peja Stojakovic finally joined the team after playing in Europe for the past 2 years after being drafted, and veteran big Vlade Divac was signed to pair with Webber in the post. This quickly became a very interesting roster that was the perfect fit for Williams' style of play. His flashy, fast-paced antics were effective with great pick-and-roll threats, floor spacers, and athletes pushing the tempo. This was basically a modern NBA team playing in the early 2000s. They were a trailblazer for sure. It's a spread pick-and-roll, run and done, fast-paced. You know the drill. And this was where things got fun. Williams had some of the most unique and creative moves that I've ever seen, and there's truly no one else like him in the league, and there's never really been anyone close to him since. He skyrocketed in popularity, reaching top 5 in jersey sales as a rookie. His infamous nickname skyrocketed his popularity even more after a media assistant referred to him as the name White Chocolate.
That's the guy, White Chocolate. When you say that name, you know who you're talking about?
White Chocolate.
White Chocolate.
What they call him? White Chocolate? Yeah, he's going to be special.
His street ball style of play with all the flash and pizzazz made his name stick immediately. In a lot of ways, his Pete Maravich comparison was very accurate. He was no doubt doing things that no one else was doing at this time. I mean, just look at his behind-the-back elbow pass. It's nasty. It looked like he was playing in an and-one league. But to say that he was truly the second coming of Pistol Pete was far from the truth. He had the play style, but totally lacked the productivity. Pistol Pete was one of the best ever, and his 13 and 6 averages with close to 2 steals a game are not bad by any means, but when you dig deeper into it, you can really see how productive Jason Williams was. To start, his efficiency was bad. He pulled bad shots. He wasn't a good shooter. He was really just a spark plug for the most part. His decision making wasn't good at all. He averaged 3 turnovers a game and gambled on a lot more steals than you'd want from your starting point guard. The Kings turned these games to wins, but they actually started to see more success, cutting into some of Williams' minutes and giving his teammates a bigger role. His minutes and averages dropped the next 2 seasons, while the Kings started to see more and more success, and I think Williams really started to gain some frustration at this point. The risk of drafting Williams seemed to appear. Williams failed yet another drug test, suspending him for the first 5 games of the 2000 season. He also had a tendency to lash out at fans in the arena. He faced 2 fines totaling $25,000, with the second instance involving him shouting racial slurs at an Asian fan. Williams lost his position with Nike due to the incident, and actually lost his spot on the team too. The Kings concluded that his behavior made him more of a trouble than he was worth, and he also had not developed into the complete point guard that they was expecting him to be. I mean, he really hadn't developed at all, to be honest. Williams was later traded to Vancouver for Mike Bibby, a very interesting and pretty debatable trade. My take is that Bibby's the less talented guy, undoubtedly, but he definitely fit the role that the Kings needed and kind of what they expected from White Chocolate to play initially. Sacramento went on to have their best year, but Williams debatably did too. His numbers jumped up to a very solid 15-8, borderline all-star-ish level, but his efficiency numbers were way down, holding him down below that mark. He got more of a reign to do as he pleased once again, and this team was fun to watch, playing with the young Pau Gasol, who was actually pretty similar to Chris Webber in a lot of ways. But with Williams, it was the best of times, where he was a clear all-star, and the worst of times, where he made your team lose, straight up. Williams and the Grizzlies struggled for the next 2 years, being well below 500 before coming into their own. The 2004 season, they started to put it together a little bit before being knocked out of the first round of the playoff, and the same thing in the following year. At this time, I think it's safe to say that White Chocolate was kind of coasting. After being swept by Phoenix in 2005, an article surfaced of him saying, "I'm happy, I go home, see my kids and my wife, and I'm okay." All of this is just kind of secondary to me. He freaked out at the reporters, screaming and taking his pen away for publishing the article, which he claims was taken out of context. But was it really, though? J. Will was 29 at the time, saw declining numbers the last 3 years, and really hadn't seen any technical improvements since he came into the league. I mean, he was the same old player with the same noticeable holes in his game. The Grizzlies saw the same dead end that I saw, and this player wasn't the future championship guard that they wanted around their star in Pau Gasol. He was dealt in the biggest deal in NBA history, moving 13 players, with Williams landing in South Beach. He got to share the backcourt with NBA legend in Dwayne Wade, and this ended up being the perfect place for his declining talents. I mean, he couldn't pull the same antics he's been doing, and although his game may not have been as fancy, and his numbers weren't through the roof, this was the best version of Williams at any point in his career. He put up 12 points and 5 assists with actually very good shooting splits for the first time in his career. He was very impactful, being third in scoring and second in passing on the team. He was a great fit. You could tell he had matured a bit to this point, and being in a system that was a little less free may have been beneficial had it come earlier, but nonetheless, this was the perfect spot for him. This team went on to do big things in the playoffs, following a 52-30 finish. They were stacked with other veterans like GP, Alonzo Mourning, and Shaquille O'Neal, around their star in Dwayne Wade. Williams helped them on the way to one of the more memorable championship seasons in recent history. It's hard to say that they would have been able to do it without him and the strides that he took this year. The team declined after their storybook ending to the year, with the injury bug biting a lot of their big names, including Williams. He was in the clear decline at this point. He played 2 more years with Miami, serving as their starting point guard primarily for both the years. Following the 2008 season, the persistent injuries forced Williams to retire before attempting a return just 2 years later with the Dwight Howard Magic. He played all 82 games in 2010, with a minor role coming off the bench for the Eastern Conference Finals team for the first time in his career, but this was the last time he was in the league as anything more than a bench warmer. White Chocolate had one of the most interesting skill sets ever. He was a phenomenal talent, undoubtedly, but I just don't think he was all that effective of an NBA player, to be honest with you. There were way better players in the league at this time. Statistically, I don't believe he was ever a top 10 point guard in the league. If you want to argue it, I'll say sure, and if he was, it wasn't by much. If you can name the 10th best point guard in 2008, I'll give you $100. I mean, nobody knows guys like this. It's the highlight reels that get the names across. I mean, guys like him get overrated by the highlights on SportsCenter. It's bound to happen. I think he falls into the same category as guys like Jamal Crawford or J.R. Smith. He was a great player, no doubt. Good player, more like. But I have to say, despite how fond I am of the guy and his game and what he's done for the era and the game altogether, he's going to go down as one of the most overrated players from this time frame. Thank you guys for watching. Let me know if you disagree, and peace out.